I am your host, and we have a businessman extraordinaire in the office with us today, right here in the studio, to talk about what it's like when Jesus impacts your business. A lot of people find it really hard to believe that if you're not in ministry, if you're not a pastor, if you're not a traveling evangelist or a prophet of some sort, that, Jesus and your business, they don't really mix. It's like religion and politics. They don't go together. But I personally disagree with all of those statements. I believe that if God has called you in this world and he's given you a business to run and he's given you a life to live, that he should have a lot to do with all of those aspects. And in the last 3 hours that I spent with Ron over dinner last week, I believe he believes the same thing. And so I just want to spend some time with Ron today, allow you to sit in on this conversation and hear what it's like to run a business when Jesus is the king of your life and the Lord of your life, and you're making decisions based on that. So Ron, thank you for coming today. I appreciate you stopping by the studio.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about your walk of faith. I know we talked about this a little bit, but for the sake of the audience, tell me a little bit about when and where and how you found Jesus.
Yeah, so, I was, it goes back when my mother and I were just us two. And, my mother was a waitress. And so I remember a time when we would gather at the table and dump out all of the change from her tips and from my dumpster diving for Coke bottles and shining shoes so that we could roll up the pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters and so that we could pay the bills. And, my mother was, she had to leave school in the 10th grade so that she could have me. And it was us. And my father left when I was about 4 or 5. And that was a good thing because, he wasn't the kindest person to us.
Wow.
And so it was a relief when he was gone. And that went for a few years until I was 9. And my mother married my stepfather and really changed our lives. We moved from California to Texas, and my grandmother came along with us. And my grandmother was a very spiritual, loving, kind person that really was a major influence on my life.
Mine too.
And kept me in church. And so when I was about 12 was when I accepted Jesus, and then I was soon baptized after that. And but it had a major impact on my life, and I wish that I could say that I followed on that path for the rest of my life. However, things took some turns. And in fact, I was sharing with somebody today, and we were talking about what day it was, and I thought, wow, I said, actually, I've been married for 46 years today.
Congratulations.
Well, it just wasn't with my first wife.
Oh.
But I have been married 46 years, just not with my first wife. But that's to tell you how my life kind of took a little bit of a turn. I went from, I actually, in 12 years, I was the first to graduate of any of my parents and of my grandparents.
You mean to graduate from high school or from college?
From high school.
From high school. Okay.
From high school.
Wow.
So I was the very first. And I went to 10 different schools from kindergarten to graduating from high school. That was probably a good thing. Found out later that I had dyslexia.
Oh, wow.
And so as it turned out, they just kept promoting me. So
just move along.
I just kind of I just kind of maneuvered, right? And I, by the grace of God, truly by the grace of God, I was able to get into the military because I knew I wasn't going to be able to go to college at that point in my life.
Right.
Because I had just barely scraped figuring out a way to graduate from high school. So going to college seemed to be out of the question.
That's a big stretch.
Yeah. So I went into the military. That wasn't the easiest thing for me because of having dyslexia. It was undiagnosed at that point in my life. I thought of myself as just not quite as smart as the other people. And because because I couldn't read. And I mean, I could write, I could write my name, but I barely knew my ABCs.
Oh, wow.
I graduated high school.
That says a lot about our education system, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, that's why the majority of my kids go to a private Christian school. But not to say anything about my grandchildren that go to public school too, but they've got parents that are educators. So I got out of the military, and that's when I got into business. And I went to Bible college, could not manage, so there was, I was in the ministry, but I couldn't graduate from Bible college to get my degree. And so I quit. I went into business. I owned my first businesses by the time I was 24 years old. I sold my first two businesses by the time I was 26. I went into real estate. I'd made my first $1 million by the time I was 27.
Wow.
And I was completely broke by the age of 30.
Okay, we have to jump to a break, but I want to hear more about how you made that transition. I mean, you can't make it, you barely made it in the military, barely made it in high school, couldn't get into college, couldn't make it in Bible school, but now all of a sudden you're a millionaire in business. Sounds like there's something there that maybe you're hiding behind the curtain for right now. When we come back from the break, I want to hear more about that. Okay, you can drop the live.